We think women need to talk more openly about money because money really matters. It shouldn't be embarrassing or confusing. Join the conversation. We'll be discussing a whole range of topics which will help you get comfortable with your finances. Money Matters. Brought to you by AJ Bell.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the AJ Bell Money Matters podcast. I'm Laura and with me is Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. We always say that we love to hear from you on our socials, that we want you to suggest topics for us to discuss. And in this episode, we're going to prove we absolutely mean it because we got a message on our Instagram which asked us to look at quick wins to deliver some financial positivity. And that's exactly what we're going to do this episode.
Yes, our one big thing this week is going to be to give you some tips on those little financial opportunities that you can exploit to make your world a little bit more comfortable. And I think this is such a great topic because we talk often about, the big things of investing and saving, but actually some of these small wins that may only take you 10, 15 minutes can be pretty lucrative and also give you a very feel-good feeling, don't they?
They absolutely do. And you're absolutely right. They can take a tiny amount of time and you can really notice the difference very quickly. And while we're talking about little wins, our interview this week is about a potential big win, investing in yourself. Our special guest this week is Joy Foster from TechPixies. Now, TechPixies has helped hundreds of women upskill, retrain, and return to work. And Joy is incredibly open about her own battles with ADHD and introduces us to ants, those little negative thoughts that crawl all over us and prevent us from reaching our potential.
But let's start, as always, with that one big thing. And as Danny said, this is the one that you asked us to talk about, and that's little wins. So what are these small steps that you can make to improve your financial outlook? So let's run through a few of them, but also maybe share our personal experiences, Danny, of small wins we've had.
I'm going to start, but I'm only going to flag this one because I am afraid that I have never been smart enough to take advantage of this, but I know that you have, and that is changing your current account in order to grab some cash that's on offer to do just that. And at the moment, you can back up to £190 by making that switch. So what are the hoops? Because you must have to jump through some, Laura.
There's a little bit of process, but yeah, I did this. There was this big boom in switching offers last year, and I capitalized on that and jumped around and switched my account a couple of times because there's nothing to stop you switching your account. And then once you've received the welcome bonus, moving again. So the key criteria that you have to stick to is you have to use the current account switching service. But that actually makes your work much easier because effectively what that does is transfers everything from your old current account to your new current account. So all of your direct debits, standing orders, your recognized payee list, it moves all of those over. And it also means that if someone transfers you money after you've switched, that automatically gets redirected to your new account. So it takes loads of the hassle out of switching for you, where previously if you switched current accounts, you'd have to be doing all of that process manually. So often, almost always with these switching offers, you have to use that service, and it means that your old account is shut down. And then quite often you might need to have a certain number of direct debits or a certain amount paid in. So before you sign up to these offers, definitely check the small print to make sure that you're going to meet that criteria. Now, with the money paid in, it doesn't have to be your salary. So you could set up a direct debit that goes in from the account that you get your salary into, and then that money could bounce back out again a few days later. So it's really about, you've got to fill the criteria of this, but it doesn't mean that you actually have to use this as your main current account. So for example, I had an old student account that I was using, and it had a couple of direct debits still coming out of it, and I used that as my switching account, and I switched to one provider and netted, I think it was £150. Then I really did not like their online banking setup, and so I found another switching offer, actually switched back to the original bank that I was with. And because their switching offer didn't preclude previous customers, I made £200 out of that. So £350 I made for, I would say, probably a total of at most half an hour's work, probably much less. So it really is worth looking into these. And the little cherry on top of this is that money isn't taxable. It's treated differently. We've talked before about how some people are facing tax on their savings income and that money that you get from a savings account. But actually, because this money is treated slightly differently by the tax man, you don't have to pay tax on it. So it's actually very lucrative.
And I want to talk about that now, sticking with banks, because I know the Bank of England has cut interest rates, which has then had a knock-on to savings rates. But if you haven't shopped around yet, and I know some people still haven't moved their cash over the last couple of years, you can still get interest rates over 5%, especially if you're prepared to lock your cash away. So it is worth taking a look at that. But one really quick win that lots of people have grabbed onto this year is to use their £20,000 ISA allowance. And that then means that they are not paying tax on their interest income. Now, latest figures from HMRC suggest that savers collectively will pay more than £10 billion in tax on interest this current financial year. Now, that's a near tenfold increase on where we were just a few years ago in the tax year 21-22. If you have a basic rate of tax that you're paying, then you have a personal savings allowance of £1,000. But for higher rate taxpayers, that falls to £500, and an additional rate taxpayer gets no allowance. So they pay tax on any savings interest that's not earned within a tax wrapper like an ISA. And you can be talking about not huge amounts of money in terms of your savings, because if you're a higher rate taxpayer, if you've got £10,000 in savings and you're earning 5% interest, you'll breach that allowance. And for a lot of people, that has been something of an unpleasant surprise when they've had to pay tax to HMRC for their savings interest. So that is a really good quick win that you can do in not a great amount of time.
Yeah, and I think for so many years, because interest rates have been so low, people just haven't really had to be aware of the personal savings allowance or the fact that there's this limit on the tax-free amount that they can get from their savings interest. But now it's really key that people bear that in mind. And like you say, particularly if you've moved into that higher rate tax bracket, you don't need a huge amount in savings before you hit that limit. But let's talk energy bills now. It's been a very long time since we've talked about switching when it comes to energy bills. We've obviously had the energy price cap. Energy bills have been sky high. We then had that government support to help with the high cost of energy bills. But we're now entering a slightly more normal period where switching is an option again and is worth weighing up. So we know that the next lot of data for energy price cap is coming out later this week as we record. So we don't know what that limit is going to be set up for the next 3-month period that it applies to. But we do know that some providers are now offering fixed tariffs that start to look quite attractive, or there are also switching deals out there. So these refer a friend codes from existing customers that give both the person who's referring and the new customer a little bit of money off their bills. So that's definitely worth looking at. And I would say it's one where it's worth just looking around and getting kind of all of your ducks in a row and data in order. There's some energy calculators that you can look at to see whether the deal that's being offered by your energy provider is good versus the energy price cap. But those refer a friend deals can be very lucrative, not just in the energy space, but they are a great option if you know that you're going to be signing up to something new. It's definitely worth, dropping a message into one of your friend WhatsApp chats and saying, hey, is anyone a customer of this? Because they'll get a bit of money, you'll get a bit of money. Everyone is a winner.
Yeah, they are really worth doing and really worth keeping in touch with your mates about all of those little wins, because you'll be surprised some of your friends might have some really good ideas. And it was actually a friend that said to me that they had fixed their energy bills. And I thought, do you know what? We keep talking about energy bills. We know that energy bills are going to go up. The price cap is going to go up this autumn, even though, as you say, we haven't had the number yet. So I actually did fix my energy bill a couple of months ago, and it does look like that is going to be a little win for me. And another little win that I have had recently is You know, when you get those vouchers from the likes of a Tesco Club card, because I'm talking supermarket loyalty schemes now, and I have all the cards because there's nothing worse than going into a supermarket and realizing you're having to pay over the odds for a product. But those little vouchers that you get through the post, I've been really bad about using those until recently. And I've become really diligent and I keep them in my purse. And then if I need to go and get, a loaf of bread or something, I'll choose the supermarket that I'm going to, depending on what voucher I've got in my purse. But my daughter also broke our smoothie maker recently. She absolutely loves a smoothie. And I was able to use all of my Sainsbury's Nectar points to replace it in their Asda store. And that was a real win because it saved me 30 quid. And I know that grocery inflation actually rose last month. We've been so used to inflation not rising by as much, even though it doesn't mean prices are coming down. But it actually did rise last month again. And some of the things in your basket could have become much more expensive. I'm thinking particularly things like coffee and chocolate. So do make sure that you're keeping tabs on your spending, because if things start to get too expensive, you could think about substituting them with something else. We know lots of people are cooking much more from scratch. And if you didn't catch our episode last year with Mimi Harrison, do listen back. It is called Tips for Festive Feasting on a Budget. But there is some great ideas that you can use all year round. And she also has a cookbook out called Beat the Budget. So it's worth having a look.
And while we're talking shopping, I know I always bang on about this, Danny, but there are loads of people that haven't signed up to cashback sites yet. So the most popular ones are either Quidco or Top Cashback. They're probably the ones people will have heard of. And you can literally get cashback every time you shop. This is particularly useful for big purchases because obviously the amount that you could get in cashback, even if it's a small percentage, is quite big. They're also really good for if you're signing up to new contracts of things. So if you were signing up to a new broadband provider, for example, quite often there's quite lucrative cashback deals on there, either a percentage of the total contract or just a flat rate of 30 quid, 40 quid. So they're definitely worth using. I think it is a bit tricky sometimes to get into the mindset of always thinking about using a cashback website before you make a big purchase. And it's just remembering to do that because it's so simple once you've set up the account. You just click on a link from Top Cashback, for example, go through to the website that you're going to buy something from and then carry on purchasing it as normal. I've bookmarked it in my browser, so it's quite a good visual reminder that it's there. So then when I'm thinking of making a purchase, particularly a bigger purchase, then I remember. It's really good for holidays as well. Quite often websites like booking.com or Expedia like that will have really decent, lucrative cashback offers on them. So definitely one to check out, and you can make money for just the shopping that you were going to make anyway.
It's remembering to do it though, Laura. That's where I fall down, because bookmarking it, that's a really good idea, because I get to the end and I've placed the order and then I think, well, that was stupid. You've just missed out potentially. And even though it can be teeny tiny amounts, every little bit does add up.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually one thing that my husband and I now just shout at each other when we're about to make a big purchase. One of us will remember and go, cash back, so that we remember to do it. But we definitely don't remember every time.
Now, this one's really basic, but I think it's really important just to reiterate it. And that is, make a budget and stick to it. I know still so many people don't keep an eye on their spending. I have to say that at the beginning of every week, I'm really sad because I'm still a pen and paper girl, and I'll actually go into my bank and I'll work out what's in there for the amount that I've got that I can spend on things like groceries, and I'll figure out what I've got left and potentially what's coming down the tracks. And it just means that I know if I've got that little bit of wiggle room for a nice little treat, because it is so easy for spending to get away from you. And good habits, once you form them, they can really set you up for life. And if you're not old school like me, pen and paper seems a bit dinosaur, then there are loads of bank accounts out there that will help you with that. And one thing that I did do, which I found really useful, was to sign up for that rounding up. So every time you make a purchase, it rounds up to the nearest pound, and that extra bit of cash is then put into a savings account, and that can really add up. And I think if you can just visualize, really keep track of your financial life, take advantage of free stuff, cashback, that kind of thing, then it can make a huge difference. And one of the trends that I've seen recently is a no spend weekend. So you spend the entire weekend, and the idea is that you do everything free. You take advantage wherever you can. So you go for a walk, you visit a free gallery, museums, that kind of thing. You look in your fridge and freezer and you go with the leftovers. We have one day a week where we have potluck leftovers, and it's basically reach in the freezer and grab a Tupperware and reheat it and hope for the best. It doesn't go down particularly well with the kids, but I love it because it saves me money and I don't have to cook.
It's a great idea. I like the idea of a no spend weekend. I'm not sure how I would fare with that. Maybe that's a good challenge to set myself. So easy, I think, particularly when you've got kids. I'm going to make my daughter the excuse here, but even in the summer, you go to a park and you think, oh, well, that was a good free activity. And then the ice cream man turns up, or then there's a really good cafe with a yummy bit of cake. And before you know it, you've spent money. But that is a good challenge, I think, to really hunt out, either have a completely free weekend or just really hunt out the much cheaper things to do. And it's those kind of that kind of planning ahead that can really help. So doing some of that financial housekeeping. We've talked before about pension consolidation. So merging all of your pensions into one place, and that's a really useful, just to know how much you've got in that total pot, have it all in one place. Much easier to manage if you've got one login, and then you can check on your pot and check that you're on track with your goals. But planning ahead is another one, Danny, that I think we would bucket under a bit like budgeting, a little bit boring, but a little bit sensible, but actually very useful, because things like mortgage, knowing when your fixed rate mortgage comes to an end, knowing when your insurance contract is up, and so that it doesn't auto renew, that you've got a little calendar reminder in your phone for it. Some of this planning that actually only takes a couple of minutes to drop that calendar reminder in, or if you're a pen and paper person, Danny, like yourself, writing it into your paper diary, just to really keep on top of some of those things. And it stops you falling into the trap of accidentally paying more for something just because you didn't realize that the contract had auto renewed or your mortgage was up, for example.
Yeah, my car insurance is due for renewal on the 3rd of September, and I have written it on my calendar in great big capitals. The big issue I have with that, though, of course, is that you've got to turn the calendar over. So it's only when I get to the 1st of September that I'm like, you've got to deal with it now.
This is maybe why you should adopt some more digital methods, Danny, and put it in your phone calendar. But baby steps, we'll get there.
Okay, yeah. Now, one huge win for a lot of women can actually be found in the workplace. And my friend's an example of a really good win story for this week, because she's been out of the workplace for the last 3 years, caring responsibilities. She's been looking after her older parents. But she's now in a position where she can return to the workplace. And after having a whole load of knockbacks, let me tell you, if you're a woman in your 50s and you've been out of the workplace, it is not always straightforward to go back into the workplace. But this weekend, she told me she has finally got a job. She is returning to her career. She's really nervous, really worried that things might have changed. And of course, for a lot of people, that career break wouldn't be 3 years. It could be 10 years. And you might feel like the workplace has moved on, but there are options, including retraining.
Yeah, but finding the time and, of course, also the money to retrain is quite a tough ask for a lot of people, particularly at the moment. But our special guest this episode is Joy Foster, who is the founder of online learning hub TechPixies. It's helped thousands of women get back into the work by delivering social media training and confidence-boosting boot camps.
Joy, thanks so much for talking to us. Let's start right at the beginning for people that haven't heard of TechPixies. What is it?
Well, TechPixies started out as a company helping women return to work after career break, and specifically by teaching them the tech skills that they might have been lacking from that career break. So things like social media, digital marketing, websites, etc. That's what we taught initially. We taught initially in person, so we had courses in Oxford and in London. But over time, the demand for my time and the ability to work with women beyond Oxford and London demanded that we create an online platform. So in 2019, prior to the pandemic, 2018, 2019, prior to the pandemic, I raised some money. I built an online platform and we started serving women across the UK. And our goal was to help 100 women return to work, upskilling with tech. And then when we raised money, the goal became 1,000 women. So we're just at the cusp of that. We've had 953 women go through our social media training program. We've also introduced a business coaching program as well as a life coaching program. And so we have 3 programs that we run, all coaching based. Obviously one is for the digital marketing skills that people need with social media. One is for how do I launch and grow a business? Because there's a lot of questions around that. And then the last one is, really, if I'm not sure what my dream is, and I'm not even sure what I want to do with the next decade or 2 of my life, where do I get started? That's the life coaching element. So we now say we help women return to work, change careers, or start a business. And we do this from the angle of social media training, life coaching, and business coaching.
Because tech can be really daunting at any time. But if you're out of the workplace for any period of time, that's the bit that seems to, fast forward at an incredible pace and you just feel left behind.
Yeah. And there's really 2 major times in women's lives where they leave the workplace. One is when they have children. I had a couple of career breaks for having children. Then the other is menopause. And we're finding that perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause is very, very daunting for a lot of women. It chemically does a lot to your brain and it affects your ability to concentrate, to focus, to get the job done. And so a lot of women, without realizing what's happening to them, they start to lose confidence even in their own positions, even if they're working. And many of them will leave work because of that. But of course, there's other things like breast cancer or aging parents. There's children who have or who are autistic or who have challenges at going to school. Children who they refuse to go to school. Someone's got to stay home with them. So there's a lot of elements that impact women and their careers and their ability to work in a way that they just don't impact men, and they still don't impact men in that way. So it's very important that we don't forget about this group of people who are, essential to the economy, but also essential to their families.
You're absolutely singing our tune, because Money Matters did some research about financial wobbly bits, looking at exactly some of these points in a woman's life where, they can take a knock, or they choose to take time out and then maybe they want to go back. And that can still be incredibly difficult. I've heard a lot just in the last couple of weeks about the need for women in their 50s to get back into the workplace. And yet I've got a friend in exactly that situation who's been trying to get back into the workplace and has had knockback after knockback. So how do you help women sort of deal with that? And how do we change society in the workplace?
Yeah, I love this question because it's not that difficult to answer, but it is not something women are willing to invest in. It's a mindset shift. And I can give you a perfect example. I coach a lot of women, primarily between the ages of 40 and 60, primarily who are hitting this period of time where they're perimenopausal or postmenopausal. And one of the things that happens in that period of time is they lose a massive amount of confidence. This has to do with the fact that, they're like I said, their brain's not functioning the same way it was functioning before. This is due to lack of estrogen, other things that are happening biologically in their bodies. But what they don't realize is that in addition to, getting HRT or getting some sort of form of support from that side of things, they can also do a lot of mental work. So one of the things that we get women to do is create a vision for their lives. Most people, like I'd say 95% of people, plan a holiday more than they plan their lives. So actually creating a vision for their life and putting that down on paper. In one of our training programs, free training programs, we teach how to create a Canva vision board where you can design a really beautiful board that you can hang up on your fridge, you can put in your bathroom, you can put by your bedside. But just getting a clear vision of your life. This is what my life looks like 3 years from now. now that I know how to use social media skills, or now that I've launched my business, or now that I know what my dream is, or whatever it is, but getting really clear on what their life looks like, not in just one area, but in 4 key areas. So love and relationships, health and well-being, time, money, freedom, vocation, and creative expression. But just spending the time to do that, the number of women who I work with who they just don't spend the time to create a vision and craft a vision for their life. The next thing is to spend time on that vision every day. And then to notice what you're noticing. Are there automatic negative thoughts that are coming up as you lean into this life that you would love? And there usually will be. We call them ants, and we want to squash the ants. And there's different ways that you can squash the ants. But that is a huge part of the work that I do, is subconscious reprogramming, helping people to think differently. I say it's easy because, listening to a recording every morning, every night for 67 days, it's actually not that complicated. We brush our teeth every day, twice a day for 2 to 3 minutes. Like, we make cups of tea in this country 15 times a day. So, it's something you can do. The problem is people don't do it. And, they don't invest in it either. It took me a year to learn how to unlock, how to create a brain prime with someone, how to unlock those automatic negative thoughts. I had to pay $15,000 to even get that technology. And so when I ask people to pay me to then help them unlock that, there's so many women who are like, well, I can't invest that. I don't have, I'm not even earning right now. And, my whole point is, well, would you like to be earning? Because if you'd like to be earning, I can help unlock that.
Look, a lot of women will be listening to this and thinking, I don't have time. I don't have the resources, just exactly what you've said. My life is too busy. I've got to go out and walk my dog. I've got to go and pick the kids up. I've got to spend money on them, not on me. How do you twist that round? How much does it cost? And how much time should people be investing in themselves?
Well, I mean, me personally, I have probably invested, I wouldn't be surprised if I've invested £250,000 over the last decade for me to upskill and learn new things. That's allowed me to build a business that turns over $250,000 every year. On average. So, for me, that investment has been essential, right? Getting women, first of all, women aren't thinking big enough. The number of women I work with who want to start businesses and they're thinking about 10-pound products, or 100-pound products. All I have to do is ask them the question, how many 10-pound products would you have to sell to make 100,000? They do the math and they're like, that's a lot. It is a lot, and it's like, so I think the first thing to say is that, yes, we're busy, right? But there's that old adage that says, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. The reality is we're also fantastic, amazing multitaskers. We're also people who, get the job done. So, if this is something, if financial independence is something that someone really, really wants, it is very doable. But they are going to have to invest in themselves. And I do, whenever I talk to women, I say it's not about asking for permission. It's about asking for support. Unfortunately, most women are still dependent on either a spouse, a parent, or the government. And I think people listening to this would be able to identify with that. Like, who am I dependent on? Am I dependent on my spouse, the government, or my parents? Because the number of women I talk to who, this generation of women who, whose parents came out of the baby boomers, they're financially much more stable than our generation is. And even our family has benefited from the fact that my mother is more financially stable than we currently are. And she's been able to support us, not just with family holidays, but also supporting one of our children with their school fees, things like that. And I'm not the only one. There's a number of people that I know who have school fees and other things where the parents are paying still. So you have to look around and you have to say, am I financially dependent or am I financially independent? Very few women can say they're financially independent, where they don't receive government money, they don't receive money from a spouse or an ex-spouse, or where they don't receive money from parents. And I think we've got to start thinking that way. We've got to start thinking, okay, well, what would financial independence look like for me? we want financial independence for our children. We want our children to succeed. That's why we invest in our children's educations. Why wouldn't we do that for ourselves as well, right? And just to think that, okay, I have a university degree and that was, that's all I need. That doesn't work these days. In fact, the university degree, as fantastic as it is, creates more debt for people than it does actually create income. So, there's so many things you can learn how to do online these days that cost anywhere from £100 to, let's say 25,000 pounds, but that can change your life and can transform your life. And we've built exactly that at TechPixies. There's lots of different ways for women to get started on that journey.
And a lot of what you provide is also free as well.
Yeah, we start free because I think people want to try before they buy. And I think that's also important for someone to, you have to build the know, like, and trust factor a little bit. People don't just want to, they're not just going to come and spend money with you. They want to, make sure that it's the right place for them. It's the right vibe. It's the right, environment for you. And I believe strongly in that. I think that people should try before they buy. We have a social media superhero boot camp. It's a week long. It's 1 hour a day for 5 days. And we get people to do homework and really kind of learn, get into what it would feel like if they were in our community learning from us. And we also have a business masterclass that helps people get set up with the most important things they need to know about their business. So we have lots of different ways for people to learn from us for free, because I think once you've tried something for free and you've got results, then it's definitely a more likely that you're going to want to invest in the next stage.
Let's talk about your journey as well. We spoke to Debbie Wasco a few episodes ago about the importance of investing in female-run companies. You were talking there about raising funds. How hard was it for you on that journey?
Oh, that's a great question. So I know actually Debbie, when I was one of my first jobs, sort of post children, was working for Sherry Kutu at Founders for Schools. So I was inviting founders to come into schools to inspire children to become entrepreneurs. And Debbie was one of our kind of go-to founders because she had just sold Love Home Swap for $53 million, and it was a perfect person to come into the schools. She knew Sherry quite well, so she ended up coming and speaking for us quite a lot. And really, it was her story and many other stories of women. Alex DePledge, for example, is another person that spoke at those events. I started thinking, oh gosh, maybe I'm an entrepreneur. That's when I got the idea. Well, we can start a tech skills school for women who have been out of work, maybe looking after kids. Originally, that was my original idea. I had no idea there were menopause and breast cancer and all aging parents. I learned that along the way. And so, we had I called a friend of mine and I said, I have no money to start this business, but I have this idea to build a digital skills school. At the time, the only way that you could do that was if you went to London, which from Oxford is a 6-hour round trip. By the time you get into London and get back, there's no way a woman with kids can do it. It's just not possible. You can't. You got to be there for the whole day. It's impossible. So I said, I want to create this digital skills school. And I called a friend of mine and he said, oh, you're never going to believe this. We've got a 75,000 pound grant that just came across our desk. You should apply for it. So we applied for 15,000 pounds, or 16,000 pounds, which was the initial funds that we thought we needed to launch the business. We won the grant. And that's what we launched TechPixies with. It hasn't been easy. In fact, one of the bugbears I had was, the Rose review that came out saying we should invest in more women's businesses. I couldn't get my hands on any of that money. None of it. I reached out to banks and every bank said no. There was a point in time where we had, in 2022, we had zero investment, zero funding. I had to do everything with sales, which is great. I mean, it's good to be able to do that. But when Debbie talks about the money that they want to make available, when the Rose review talks about the money they want to make available, to get your hands on that kind of money is actually very challenging. And we certainly found it to be very challenging.
Joy, it's been an absolute delight talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on here. And I know for women, it's just there's a lot of things against them. And if we can focus on the things that are for us and not against us, and we can find those pockets of inspiration and we can stay focused on those positive bits, we can keep moving forwards. And we really have an opportunity right now for women to become financially independent, but it's going to take investment of time, energy, effort, money on women's part to get there, but it's going to be 100% worth it. So I hope someone listening to this hears that and understands that there is another side of life that we can experience and explore if we're willing and if we make the decision that we want to do that, even if we don't know how it's all going to work out.
Joy Foster there, and you can find TechPixies on social media or via their website. Just Google TechPixies, and there are plenty of resources out there to help women get back into work. So check out the Comeback Community on social media, or listen back to one of our previous podcasts, How to Take a Career Break and Successfully Return to Work. But did Joy have a confession, Danny?
Well, it was less of a confession from Joy and more of a light bulb moment when she sort of realized why sometimes the way that she engaged with her finances might be a little bit different to the way other people do.
I didn't realize until I hit the perimenopause age was that I was ADHD. And so I found out that I was ADHD partly because it gets exacerbated in perimenopause. But I flew out to California. I had a brain scan and actually was able to look at my brain and understand my brain. And I have, because of it, because I have ADHD, I am a risk taker. I don't, follow I'm a neurodivergent in that sense. Like I don't follow the conventional norms, and that had a huge impact on my finances. And I think one of the things that, I have learned about neurodivergence and about ADHD in particular, is one of the impacts it has on you, lifelong impacts, is financial decisions. And so, I quit my corporate job that I had when I was in my 20s to chase an Olympic dream. I then had later on, I quit everything that I knew and I moved to Europe because I got engaged to a Brit. And, and I'm glad I did, because I've been married for 15 years, very happily. We've got 2 kids. We live over here. I love it over here. But I think a lot of women don't know their ADHD. And there's a lost generation of women who have never been diagnosed with ADHD. They don't know that they have it. And they're sitting in a financial mess, and they're thinking it's their fault.
Yeah, I think what she said there will resonate with a lot of people, but also it really touches on some of the things that we talked about in our recent podcast with Laura Ann Moore about how your upbringing and your approach to money and your personality can all really impact how you deal with your finances. So if you want to learn more about that, then definitely go back and listen to that episode. But that is it for this episode. Next time, we'll be talking all about your consumer rights and how to fight for your money back with consumer champion Laura Purkis from The Sun newspaper. If you've got any questions for her, then definitely send them over to us and we can put them to her. You can message us on social media or email us hello@ajbellmoneymatters.co.uk.
And if you've got a suggestion of topics like little wins, things that you think that we should be covering, do let us know, because we really do love to hear from you and we pay attention to what you say. And we're also growing the AJ Bell Money Matters community. So we'd love it if you join the conversation on Instagram, Facebook, X and LinkedIn. And if you haven't already, then sign up to our newsletter so you never miss a thing. You'll find it on our website, ajbellmoneymatters.co.uk.
Thanks a lot for listening, and we will see you next time.
Before you go, please remember this podcast is for educational purposes, and the views expressed don't necessarily reflect those of AJ Bell. The podcast isn't telling you if a certain investment is suitable or not. Don't forget that the value of investments can change, and you can lose money as well as make it. It's also important to remember that how you're taxed will depend on your individual circumstances, and rules can change. The way an investment performed in the past may not be the same as how it behaves in the future. If you want help, go see a qualified financial advisor.